The stage road ended at a churchyard, and the whole town of Bracken Hollow was there to watch Ellen Mercer make a fool of herself. She stepped down from the wagon with her one carpet bag and her mended gray coat, and she looked past the banker's son in his clean collar, past the 2 ranchers who had written her letters, past every man who had come to look her over like a heifer at auction. She looked at the man standing apart from all of them, near the fence, with his hat brim low and the left side of his face ruined by fire. "I choose him," Ellen said. Somebody laughed. It came out of the crowd quick and ugly, and then a second laugh joined it, and then a woman's laugh, high and delighted, the kind that spreads. Josiah Kane did not move. He stood with his hands at his sides and let it wash over him the way a fence post lets weather pass. And from behind his leg, a small girl in a too big coat leaned out and stared at Ellen with her whole face open. Like someone who had been waiting a very long time for a door to finally knock, the laughing went on. Ellen crossed the yard anyway. She had come 900 miles for a life. And she had read the letters, and she knew a thing the town did not know, which was that of the 4 men who had written to the agency in St. Louis, only one had asked what she liked to read. Only one had written that his daughter had a way of putting her cold feet on a person in the night, and he thought a woman ought to be warned about that ahead of time. Only one had signed his letters without boasting. She stopped in front of him. Up close the scar was worse, and also, somehow, less. It ran from the corner of his left eye down past his jaw and vanished into his collar, and the skin there was pulled tight and shining like river ice. "You are Josiah Kane," Ellen said. "I am." "Then I am late by about 2 minutes, and I apologize for it." Behind her the Reverend cleared his throat and asked, loud enough to carry, whether Miss Mercer was quite certain, and whether she would like a moment to sit down out of the sun. "I am certain," Ellen said. "I have been sitting for 4 days. The little girl came all the way out from behind her father then. She was 7 years old, and her hair had been braided by a man who did not know how, and she held out one hand with something in it. A biscuit wrapped in a scrap of flour sacking, gone hard hours ago. "I saved you this," the girl said, "in case they made you wait." Ellen took it. She did not say thank you right away because her throat had closed, and when a woman is being laughed at by 40 people, she cannot afford to let her voice break in front of them. So she put the biscuit in her coat pocket like it was a letter from a king, and she said, "That was well thought of. What is your name?" "Nell, Ellen said. "I am going to eat this on the ride out, and I am going to make you a better one tomorrow." Josiah took the carpet bag out of her hand without asking. He handed her up onto the wagon seat. And when he climbed up beside her and took the reins, he said one thing only, low, meant for her and nobody else. "You can change your mind at the crossroad. I will turn around, and nobody out there will ever hear a word of it from me." Ellen looked straight ahead at the road. "Drive," she said. The ranch lay 11 miles north, where the grass went from yellow to a hard silver green, and the land folded up into low hills. They rode most of it without talking. Nell sat in the wagon bed with her back against a crate of nails, watching Ellen the whole way. And every time Ellen turned around, the girl looked off fast at the horizon and pretended she had been studying it. The house came up out of a shallow draw at the end of the afternoon. It was small and low and unpainted, and Ellen understood in one glance what she had married into, or was about to. The porch sagged. The kitchen window was mended with oilcloth. There was a barn behind it that was newer than the house by 10 years and better built by 100, which told her something about the man. Josiah stopped the team and did not get down right away. "It is not much to look at," he said. "I did not come 900 miles to look at it." He got down. He handed her out. And in the doorway of the house, Ellen stopped. because the kitchen inside was swept clean, and there were fresh-cut wildflowers jammed into a tin cup on the table with the stems all different lengths, cut by a child's hand. Nell pushed past her and stood by the table and did not look at anybody. "I did that," Nell said. "I did it this morning. Pa said not to get my hopes about it." Ellen set her bag down. "They are the best flowers I have seen in a year," she said, and she meant it, and Nell went red from her collar to her hair and ran out the back door. Josiah stood in the doorway with his hat in his hands. "She has been asking," he said, "every day for 2 weeks. How many days now? How many days now?" I told her not to. I could not stop her. Ellen took off her coat and hung it on the nail by the door, and that one act, more than the wagon ride, more than the churchyard, was the moment she moved in. "Then I am glad she did not listen to you," Ellen said. "Where do you keep the flour?" The arrangement was plain, and they spoke it out plain that first night, at the table, after Nell was in bed. He needed a woman to run the house and mind the girl. Winter was coming, and he was out with the stock from dark to dark, and there had been one night in February when Nell had run a fever alone in the house for 6 hours while he dug 200 head out of a drift. He had made up his mind that night that he would not risk it a second time. "The rest," he said, "is up to you, and there is no hurry on it. There is a room at the back. It has a bolt on the inside of the door. I put it on this week." Ellen turned her cup on the table. "And the marrying," she said. "Whenever you want. Or not at all. You will be paid either way, and you can leave in the spring with the money and no hard feelings. Why did you not tell me about your face in the letters?" He looked at the lamp. "Because I wanted the letters to go on a while," he said. That was the most honest thing anybody had said to Ellen Mercer in her whole life, and she thought about it for a long time after the lamp was out. She learned the shape of them in the first weeks. Josiah Kane did not talk. He worked. He was up before light and in the barn and back at the table at noon and gone again, and if a thing was broken, it was fixed within a day, without discussion. But he watched. Ellen caught him at it. Not the way a man watches a woman he wants, the way a man watches weather he is not sure of yet, standing in a doorway, judging whether to bring the stock in. Nell talked enough for both of them, and then some. She talked while Ellen kneaded bread, and while Ellen mended, and while Ellen scrubbed the black off the bottom of a pot that had not been properly scoured since the last woman in that house went into the ground. She talked about the Dunmare, and about a boy at school named Alfred who was a liar, and about how her mother had died when she was 3, and how she did not remember her, but she remembered a blue dress, and she said all of it in the same easy voice, the way children set down enormous things without knowing the weight. On the 9th day, Ellen came to the table and found 4 places set instead of 3. And then Nell quietly took the 4th away and put it back in the cupboard, and her ears were red. "I forgot," Nell said. Ellen did not ask who the 4th place had been for. She had a guess, and it was not a dead woman. It was a habit of hoping that the girl had built up over 2 weeks of asking how many days now, and had not yet trained back out of herself. At supper, Nell put her cold, bare feet on top of Ellen's under the table and left them there and dared her with her eyes to say anything about it. Ellen said nothing about it. Across the table, Josiah saw. He looked down at his plate, and he did not speak for the rest of the meal. And afterward he went out and split wood in the dark until Ellen could not hear the axe anymore over the wind. The first thing Ellen fixed was not the house. It was the account book. She found it in a drawer, a leather ledger gone soft at the corners, and she asked him one evening if she might look at it, and he shrugged like a man who has already lost that particular fight with himself. She sat with it for 3 nights. On the 4th night she put it on the table in front of him and turned it around. "You are being cheated," Ellen said. Josiah did not laugh at her. That was the second honest thing. "Show me," She showed him. She had kept books for her father's dry goods store from the time she was 15 until the day the bank took it, and she had a head for it that nobody had ever once thanked her for. Hargrove, the buyer in town, had been paying cane beef by the hundredweight at one price and settling at another, and had been shaving the tally since the spring of the year before, and the difference over 18 months came to more than $400, which was the exact difference between a man who was failing and a man who was not. Josiah sat very still and read the columns twice. 400, he said. 411. I can show you the weight slips. You kept them all. You keep everything. He put his hand flat on the page and left it there. Nobody has ever gone through this, he said. I have not gone through this. I cannot sit at a desk after a day out there. I go to sleep in the chair. You do not have to anymore. He raised his head and looked at her then, straight on, with the whole ruined side of his face turned to the lamp for the first time since she had come. And Ellen understood that he had spent 11 days angling that side away from her without either of them naming it. Miss Mercer, he said. Ellen, she said. Ellen, I did not know you were like this. Like what? He seemed to search for it and not find it, and finally he took his hat off the peg and went out to check on stock that did not need checking, and Ellen sat in the kitchen with her hands shaking and a feeling in her chest like a door coming unstuck. The town did not let it go. Bracken Hollow had made up a story about her on the day she stepped off the wagon, and the story was too good to give up. She heard pieces of it at the Mercantile in October, when she went in for salt and thread with Nell holding her hand, and two women near the Bolt Goods lowered their voices in the way that is meant to be overheard. Desperate, one of them said. She must have been. To take cane. They say she could not get one back east. Well, the scar, and the child, and that place falling down around him. Ellen paid for her salt. She counted her change. And Nell, 7 years old, went stiff and hot beside her and opened her mouth, and Ellen put 2 fingers on the back of the girl's neck. Gentle, which meant not here, and not today. Outside on the boardwalk, Nell was crying with rage. They are liars, Nell said. Pa is not falling down. Pa built the new barn himself. He built it by himself in one summer. They never came out and saw it. None of them ever came out and saw it. I know. They laughed at you. In the churchyard. I heard them, and Pa heard them too, and he did not say anything. Ellen crouched down on the boards in her good dress. Nell, listen. People laugh when they have looked at a thing for years and never once seen it. That is all a laugh like that is. It is not about us. I want them to see it, Nell said, fierce, wiping her face with the heel of her hand. I want them to have to see it. Ellen was quiet a moment. So do I, she said. The pressure came in November, and it came from Hargrove. Josiah went to town with the weight slips and the ledger, and he laid the numbers on the counter and asked for what he was owed. He did not shout. Ellen heard about it later from 3 different people, and all 3 said the same thing, that Kane stood there quiet as a post and said the figure and would not move. Hargrove paid 200 of it, and then he went to work. He was the buyer for 4 counties, and he had the ear of the bank, and by the end of the month word had gone around that Kane's beef was poor, and Kane's water was bad, and Kane could not be dealt with. A shipping contract that had been Josiah's for 6 years went to a man over at Cedar Draw. The bank sent a letter about the note on the north section, calling it early, 60 days. Josiah put the letter face down on the table and went out. Ellen found him in the new barn at 9 at night, sitting on an upturned crate in the dark, with his hands hanging between his knees. She did not say anything hopeful. She sat down on the crate beside him. I can sell the north section, he said to the dark. I can sell it and pay them and be done, and I will be running 200 head on ground that cannot carry 200 head, and in 3 years I will sell the rest. Or nothing. There is no or. There is, Ellen said. Fisk and Doyle and the Peterson brothers are all being shaved the same as you were. I would bet my wages on it. Nobody has gone through their books either. He turned his head. You want me to walk up to Alton Peterson and tell him he cannot count? I want you to bring them out here, Ellen said. All of them. Every one that Hargrove buys from. Out here, to this place, and let them stand in this barn and look at your stock and look at your water, and then let them look at my figures. Hargrove has beaten you one at a time for 6 years because none of you has ever once stood in the same room. Josiah was quiet for a long while. They will not come, he said. Not out here. Not for me. You heard them in the churchyard, Ellen. That is what I am to this county. That is what I have been since the fire. What are you to this county since the fire? A story, he said. Something they tell. Poor Cain. Burnt Cain. And they are not cruel about it, most of them, that is the worst part. They are kindly about it, and being pitied by a man is worse than being beat by him. Ellen looked at the barn around them in the dark. Hand-cut posts, joints tight enough to keep a lamp from guttering and a wind that was flattening the grass outside. One summer. By himself. 12 years old, that barn was not. It was 10, and it was better than anything in Bracken Hollow. They have never seen this, she said. That is all. Not one of them has ever seen this. He said nothing. She stood up. At the door she stopped. Josiah, ask them for sunrise. Why sunrise? Because a man will come at sunrise to something he is curious about and pretend later he was only passing, she said. And because this land at sunrise is worth more than any argument I could write down. He came in an hour later. She heard him take the letter off the table and put it in the drawer instead of the fire. Nell settled it. It was Nell in the end. It always was going to be Nell. The invitations went out, and half of them came back as nothing at all. 4 men said they would come. 4 out of 11. And on the Tuesday before, Ellen was at the stove, and Nell was at the table with the stub of a pencil and a piece of butcher paper, working at something with her tongue between her teeth. And she had been at it for 2 days. What are you making? Ellen said. A list. Of what? Everybody, Nell said. And she pushed it across, and Ellen wiped her hands and picked it up, and it was every family in Bracken Hollow, spelled the way a 7-year-old spells, and beside each name in the same careful pencil was one thing. Mr. Doyle. Badwell, Pa loaned him our team 2 summers. Mrs. Alden. Pa pulled her calf out of the wire. Mr. Peterson. Pa found his boy in the snow by the crossing. Reverend Ames. Pa put the church roof on and never said. Mrs. Rourke. Pa gave her the roan when her husband died and told her it was lame and it was not lame. It went on for 2 sides. Ellen sat down slowly with the paper in her hands. Nell, where did you get all this? I remembered it, Nell said. I remember everything he does. Nobody else does, so I have to. Ellen put the paper down on the table and put both hands flat on either side of it because she needed to hold on to something. They laughed at you, Nell said, in the churchyard. And they never laugh at him because he is sad, they just look away, and that is worse. But he did all of this. Every single one of these is a true thing. So I think they should come and see the barn and see the water and see us, and then they should not be allowed to say anything about any of it ever again. I think you are right, Ellen said. So, can we send it? Send what? The list, Nell said, like it was obvious. To all of them. So they know what they owe. Ellen looked at the child for a long moment. No, she said gently. Not that way. If you hand a man a bill, he will hate you for it. But there is another way. and it is better, and I am going to need your handwriting for it." They wrote 37 notes over 3 nights at the kitchen table. They did not put one word of the list in them. They put the date and the hour and the road and one line at the bottom, and the line was in Nell's own crooked pencil. And it said, "Pa built the barn hisself. Come and see it, please, Nell Kane." Josiah found them at it on the second night. He stood in the doorway a long time watching his daughter print her name 37 times. Then he crossed the room, and he did not say a word, and he put his hand on the back of Nell's head, and with the other hand he took up a pen and started addressing the envelopes. 19 wagons came up the north road in the dark. Ellen was up at 4, and she heard the first one at 5:30, and she went out on the sagging porch with her shawl and could not at first make out what she was looking at, because the lanterns strung out along that road looked like a town moving. Josiah came out behind her and stopped. "Ellen," he said, "I see it. That is Rourke's wagon. That is Peterson. That is the Reverend. That is the whole." "Ellen, I see it," she said. "Go and open the gate." The sun came up over Bracken Ridge at 10 minutes past 6, and it did what that country does about twice a year, and did it in front of everybody. The frost went off the grass in one long silver breath. The draw filled up with light from the bottom like water filling a bowl. The creek that Hargrove had been telling 4 counties was bad ran clear and hard and loud over its stones, and Josiah Kane's 240 head stood in the low meadow in it, fat and slick-coated going into winter, steaming in the cold. Nobody said anything for a while. 19 wagons worth of people stood on a hillside in their coats and looked at it. Alton Peterson walked down to the creek by himself and crouched and put his hand in it and tasted it off his fingers, which is a thing a rancher does, and then he stood up and turned around and looked back up the hill at Josiah with an expression on his face like a man doing arithmetic he did not enjoy. Then they went into the barn. Ellen watched it happen. She watched Doyle run his hand along a joint and stop. She watched 2 men get down on their knees to look at how the sills were set. She watched old Rourke's widow walk the whole length of it looking up. "Who framed this?" Doyle said. "He did," said Nell from the doorway. "Hisself in one summer, 19 and 11. And Josiah Kane, who had not spoken in front of that many people since before the fire, took his hat off and said, 'My wife's brother helped with the ridge beam for 2 days, and that is all the help there was, and I will not have it said otherwise.'" Ellen served coffee to 38 people out of every vessel in that house, and 4 borrowed off the Aldens. And when they were all standing in the yard with the sun properly up, she brought the ledger out and set it on the tailgate of the wagon and opened it, and she said, "Plain and level," so it carried. "Mr. Peterson, in August you sold Hargrove 31 head at what he called $11 the hundredweight. Would you tell these men what he settled at?" Peterson's jaw worked. 9.5, he said. Mr. Doyle. June, 9, Mr. Fisk, 9.25. "And here," Ellen said, and turned the book around so the columns faced them, "is what he has been quoting the packers at Ogden the whole time. It is printed in the stock journal. Any one of you could have read it. Not one of you did, and I do not blame you for it, because you have all been standing in your own yards alone." The talking started then, and it went on for 2 hours. Ellen stepped back out of it and stood by the porch post, and after a while she felt a small hand take hold of 2 of her fingers, and Nell was beside her, watching the yard full of people the way a general watches a field. "They came," Nell said. "They came. They are seeing it. They are." Nell was quiet a second. Then she said, without any particular ceremony, the thing she had been carrying up the stairs for 2 months. I am going to tell them, you are my mother." Ellen looked down at her. "Nell, I am not asking," Nell said. "I already decided. I decided the first day, in the churchyard, before Pa did. And I have been waiting for you two to catch up, and you are both very slow. Your father and I have not." "I know what you have not," Nell said. "I sleep in a house with 2 doors, and one of them has a bolt on it, and I have never once heard it shot." "So," Ellen laughed. It came out of her wet and undignified in front of half the county. "I want the barn, and I want the creek, and I want you," Nell said. "That is the whole list, and if you say no, I am going to keep asking every day until you are old." Josiah was standing 8 feet away with a coffee cup in his hand and had heard every word of it. He did not make a speech. Ellen had known him 10 weeks by then, and she would not have believed one if he had. He set the cup down on the rail. He walked over. He put his hand out to Ellen with the palm up in front of Peterson and Doyle and Fisk and the Reverend and the 2 women from the mercantile who had said desperate over the Bolt goods and were now standing in his yard drinking his coffee. Ellen put her hand in it, and Josiah Kane turned so that the burned side of his face was to the whole gathered town, square on, in full sunrise light, and he did not angle it away, and he said the only thing he said about any of it, ever, "This is Ellen. She is not desperate, and she was not last. She was first, and she is the reason there is a barn full of you at all. We will be married by the Reverend on Sunday if she will have me, and Nell has already made up her mind, and I have found that Nell is generally ahead of me." Somebody at the back of the crowd started clapping, and then it got away from them entirely. They were married on the Sunday. The church was full, which surprised nobody except the 3 people it should have. Hargrove lost the county in 14 months. 11 men selling together at one price is a thing a buyer cannot shave. And by the following autumn he had moved his business 2 counties east, and the bank had discovered that the note on the north section could wait after all, the way notes can when a man's neighbors go and stand in a bank lobby about it. The house got painted the summer after. White, because Nell wanted white, and Josiah said white shows every mark, and Nell said good. And on a morning in October 2 years on, Ellen came out onto a porch that no longer sagged with her coffee and found the 2 of them already at the rail, watching the light come up out of the draw the way it had that morning, filling from the bottom. Nell was taller. She had her father's stillness now when she wanted it. "Ma," Nell said, without turning around, in the flat, easy way she had been saying it for 2 years, like it had never been anything else. "Look at the creek." Ellen looked. Josiah reached over without a word and took the cup out of her hand, drank half of it, and gave it back. The frost went off the grass in one long silver breath.